Well, the odds in the Championship relegation battle this season say each individual team in the bottom three of the Championship is odds on for relegation to different extents. Of course, the bookies think Plymouth Argyle have a 90% chance of relegation and look like they've got their work cut out, don't they, under Miron Muslic after that 3-0 home defeat to Sheffield Wednesday at the weekend. Luton Town have given themselves a bit more of a sniff with an encouraging performance against Sheffield United and that crucial victory over Portsmouth before a bit of a non-entity in the end, the 4-0 loss at Burnley after an early red card. But what about Derby County? First points of John Eustace's reign last time out. They beat his old club Blackburn Rovers by 2-1. But those three clubs, it's one thing them picking up points, but who are they going to catch? Well, there's four teams that are realistically possible after Portsmouth denied them a fifth with that 1-0 victory over Leeds on Sunday. They look like they're off to swan off into the sunset of mid-table comfort. So those four are Cardiff City, after that 2-1 loss at Sunderland last time out. Stoke City, of course, losing 3-2 at Coventry City in a dramatic lunchtime game. Hull City, who have made some progress under Ruben Sellers, and Oxford United, who earned a valuable point at Norwich on Friday night under Gary Rowett. So plenty to get stuck into. Who of those four is likeliest for those three to try and catch? And will the three teams in the relegation dogfight, in the relegation zone even at the moment, be the three that goes down? That's what we're going to be discussing on this Championship podcast. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. You could do us a massive favour before we start getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify, because that would help us out an awful lot. So we'd be really grateful if you could do that. For now, I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host, as always, I nearly said as always and as ever there, as always, by Oli Mann from the Sheffield United way. Oli, good evening. How are you keeping, mate?
As always and as ever, I'm not too bad, thank you, Gab. Yeah, it's been a long day. Obviously, I saw you in person this morning, letting people peek behind the curtain. We were filming The Sportsman this morning, so hopefully people will be able to go and find that as well if they're interested, or if they think they've seen us today and think, oh, they're a group that talk sense. We can prove you wrong altogether by going and watching The Sportsman.
Absolutely, yeah. One or two hot takes and changes of opinion, shall we say, in there.
I don't know what you're talking about, Gab. Who knows who changes their opinion and loses a long-held stance?
Oli, relegation dogfight in the Championship. Obviously, no skin in the game for you, thankfully, from a red and white perspective. I know you've sort of said Stoke City could be the ones outside the bottom three that are the likeliest to be sort of possibly drawn in.
Yeah, I think so. You know, the bottom three at the minute, the Championship is never that predictable. There is no way that in the start of March, the three teams in the relegation zone are just dead and buried and gone. I just don't believe that to be the case. I think Plymouth, unfortunately, I do think they're the worst team in the league. I think we've seen them have some fantastic times. And I actually think that if you ask their fans, would you rather stay up this season or have those moments against Liverpool, against Manchester City? Football's about moments. It's about those celebrations. They've had a fantastic time, and I'm so happy they got to experience that during this season. But for me, they're the only team I'm willing to say are dead and buried. I think other than that, it's all to play for the others. And I think Stoke are the team you're aiming for. I just do not believe in this Stoke team. I think they've got a rick in them just about every week. And even when they have such an impressive performance like they did against Coventry at the weekend, come back from 2-0 down, fight your way back into it, lose anyway. That, to me, is just a constant spiral of a team who are heading towards relegation. So, yeah, we'll see if anyone can change my mind today, but Stoke are the team that I've got real worries about.
Very interesting. Well, another team just hovering above the relegation zone right now is Cardiff City. So we're delighted to be joined by Sai from Cardiff City World. Good evening, Sai. Thanks so much for your time joining us this evening. I know that I watched some of your sort of reaction podcast after that 2-1 loss at Sunderland, and you felt like there were some positives to take from that performance, but at the same time, some glaring defensive errors and also a bit of wastefulness in front of goal.
Yeah, it's been an issue, which is it's been a real frustrating week to be honest, because we played Burnley Tuesday. We were 2-0 down by half time, and we gifted them goals with some real schoolboy defending. And then the second half, we really deserved to get at least a draw out of it. We were excellent in the second half. We just didn't take our chances. I think we hit the bar, the crossbar, the post. And then you go to Sunderland. It's not a pleasant trip anyway. It's a long trip from South Wales. And again, you know, the first goal, we just gifted it to them, trying to play out from the back. And you're always trying to chase these teams, especially we seem to do it, especially against teams sort of higher up the league. We give them like a goal or a 2-goal head start before we start playing. Up until the Villa Cup game, defensively, it looked like we'd started to get rid of these really silly mistakes. We just had all season. It's been an issue where we'll be doing really well defensively, look solid, very good on the ball, and then all of a sudden, one individual player or collectively, they'll just switch off at the back, and a team will score, and suddenly then the game's changed. And it's just a frustrating week because we come away from, you know, 3 very difficult games. In obviously the cup game's slightly different. No one expected us to get much from Villa, yes. But we had Villa, Burnley, and then Sunderland, and we've come away from it. And I felt we should have beaten Burnley on Tuesday because I thought we were that good in the second half. We just kind of did it. I hate the word like that sort of luck thing, but we didn't quite get the run of the ball for the equaliser. It just didn't quite go in. But I did feel, I said to my friend, like with about 20 minutes to go, I said, if we score 1 now, we will go on and win it. But we just didn't get that one. And then Sunderland the same, because that, you know, goals change games. We get 1 back to make it 1-1, and you're thinking, right, let's kick on. And we started the second half well. And then Omar Risa switched to 3 at the back. And I've seen a lot of criticism for it, you know, from the weekend, because we went 3 at the back and the whole momentum of the second half really changed. It felt like we gave them the sort of the impetus and the momentum to kick on, and they scored not long after that. I have a slightly different view on it. Like I think I understand what he was trying to do. Like I think he was trying to be attacking by leaving 3 at the back and sort of creating a bit of an overload a bit further up the field. Unfortunately, psychologically, I think for some of these players, they view it as a 5 at the back rather than a 3, and we just dropped in so deep, and yeah, it just became a bit of an issue, and we just never really looked like getting that equaliser after that. But it's frustrating as well. But just to add to that, we signed Yusuf Salic. I think he scored 5 in 5 or 4 in 4 since January, and we still have a real big reluctance to put the ball in the box, despite the fact every time we do put the ball in the box to him, he either scores or hits the woodwork. He hit the woodwork again against Sunderland. And it's like, I know it's not maybe the pretty football that everyone wants to see, and it's a bit old school and playing them percentages, but we got to get points on the board at the end of the day. And I think I look at the Cardiff side, and they shouldn't be where they are, but they are. And now they've just got to find a way to get points.
Yeah, certainly. And I can definitely see that. And I think at this stage of the season, it's all about the points now. It's about finding those games and taking the opportunities as and when they come. What gives me a lot of confidence, though, and I'm going to try and I'll be the positive side of everything here, because I don't think Cardiff will go down. I've got a lot of confidence in them. But that's come from, I look at those games against the teams around you. And, you know, I'm looking at in recent weeks where I think it was a draw away at Plymouth, beating Hull. I think before that you'd beat Derby. Those kind of results are the ones that give me the confidence that actually looking at the games you've got left, there's enough there against sort of some of these other teams, maybe teams who start to be a bit beachy as the season goes on. There's points there on the table for Cardiff. But I think tomorrow night is obviously a big one, because obviously that narrative can change so fast. I'm talking about you beat the teams around you, that'll keep you up. How big does it feel tomorrow with Luton obviously coming to visit yourselves? And does it feel like if you can win that, it really does give you all that breathing space that you need?
It's interesting. So I appreciate the positivity. And look, in fairness, I will say I'm a bit frustrated by last week, just because I felt we performed well enough to get points and we ended up with none. Whereas I I mean, Gabe will say, I've said all season, I do not see Cardiff going down. I've been quite steadfast from that, but I also thought we'd kick on a bit at some point, and we kind of haven't. In terms of tomorrow, it's massive. You don't, ultimately, like you are right, you don't get relegated where you are, where we are. You don't go down if you beat the likes of, like Portsmouth beating Leeds. It's the teams around you. The way Luton have been playing, and the way I know Cardiff are not only capable of playing, but we've been playing all right recently, even in the last week where we dropped points. I'm fairly confident, but that's normally when football bites you on the backside, is when you go into games and you're fairly confident. What I struggle to match up is I look at our team individually and I look at how they performed this season, and more of them have been decent to good than the ones who haven't. And then I look at them on paper as individuals, and I think, God, wow, this squad is good. Like, there's some really a good mix of experienced technical footballers, battlers, and young kind of footballers making a name for themselves who've got a really high upside, like, Alex Robertson and Ruben Colwell, and Will Alves is coming in January. Even Salic is like 21. And then you've got like Aaron Ramsey and Callum Chambers, players who've been there and done it at the top level. Yeah. And I can't quite put my finger on it, other than we were awful at the start of the season under Errol Bullock. And then we had a little period over Christmas and Omar Issa where there was a point where I really thought he might be out of a job at one point because it was that bad. But then ever since Oxford on Boxing Day, we've been pretty good, bar the Leeds game. Like the Leeds game's the one outlier where we just fell apart. But they were also very good that day, but we were also very bad. And, sometimes that happens, I suppose. But I do think we'll get 3 points tomorrow. What I would like to see Cardiff do, though, is I would like to see us start the game fast, get the crowd on side, go with quite an aggressive team. And I'd like to go and win the game, and not Cardiff have this really annoying habit of letting teams settle for 20, 30 minutes. And we'll do a lot of sideways, backwards, keep hold of the ball for the first sort of half hour. But what that does is, especially when you're at home, is it lets the travelling team sort of get a foot into the game, get themselves settled, and then they start to try and implement their game plan. I'd like to see us be aggressive.
Actually, the timings have worked out quite nicely, because we can bring in Lewis Williams, who's a Luton Town YouTuber, just to kind of preview Tuesday night's game between you. Because I was wondering, Lewis, from your point of view, great to have you on. What are you quite fearful of Tuesday night's game, and how do you think Luton Town are going to approach it?
Well, I actually think the longer the game goes, I think the more cager it will get, and I think that will suit Cardiff more than it would suit us. I think we need to be the more front-footed side and get the early goal, and then I think we will have it'll benefit us a lot more. I think the longer it goes, stay in a draw, I think it just benefits Cardiff.
Interesting.
So that's quite interesting, and I kind of get that from a purely performance point of view, in terms of like Cardiff tend to do better as the games go on as well. But actually, I think what Cardiff need in terms of performance is they need to go and try and win the game and get it done, because there is a bit of frustration that we're a bit passive sometimes in games, and we let teams get a foot in. And
do you think it's down to some of the do you mind me asking, do you think it's one of the it's down to some of the fitness issues that we've spoken about, from maybe dating back to pre-season? Because Omar Ritza didn't have a pre-season, of course.
Oh yeah, Cardiff, I've never known a Cardiff team look so unfit. It's like one thing we've always had over the years, similar to Luton, Millwall, Coventry, have always been able to, no matter how good your team was, you always had players who would just be able to run for 90 minutes and put in 100%. And I'm not saying they haven't put in 100%, but they just don't look fit enough to do it. Like a prime example actually is Burnley on last Tuesday. The second half, we pressed really aggressively, but only in sort of spells. It was like 10 minutes pressing, then we dropped in. But every time we pressed, we looked like we forced mistakes. They were kicking it out for a throw-in. We were winning the ball back, creating chances, things like that. And it was just, you know the manager wants to play like that. He wants to play with a quite high press, and he wants to play with width and pace. And he's brought in players to do that in January, but we don't do it for 90 minutes. You know, they're human beings. I get it, but I do think it's a fitness thing. We haven't got a very fit squad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, do you think it's going to be harder in a way to be the hunted, if you like, as opposed to Luton Town's position of the hunters? Because Luton Town know they've got to try and win games between now and the end of the season. They're chasing 21st and above, whereas Cardiff City, you're sort of almost, do you think you could risk being between that sort of rock and a hard place?
So I actually think if Luton come and try and be aggressive and attacking in the way they play tomorrow, that will play into our players' kind of better skill sets, because we're quite good on the transition. We got a lot of pace in the wide areas, and we've got, you know, like Ruben Colwell and people in the pockets. And if we tend to do a bit better when teams try and come at us a little bit and open the game up, is when teams sit in with a two banks of four, we tend to struggle a bit to break that down. A little bit better now with Yusuf Salic up front, because there's not so much pressure on Callum Robinson to be the kind of scorer. But it'll be really interesting. I think it's going to be quite a feisty game, I do, because I think there's so much, everyone's so nervous about it. Like, so everyone's going to be on edge. The fans are on edge, because before last week, we looked like we pulled away a little bit, not massively, but we had, I think it was a 6-point gap on Plymouth and a 3-point gap on Hull. So it looked like we were just starting to get a little bit of a breathing space. And then all of a sudden, luckily, Stoke have kind of been in the worst form possible, which is kind of taken the pressure off, because we've still got to play them as well. But it's just about results now, isn't it? Like, to be honest with you, as much as I would like to say, or as I did say, I'd like to see us go and win the football match, I'd also take a deflected goal and a really nerve-wracking 1-0. So it's, you know, it is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah, Lewis, how are you feeling about it? Do you think you'll? I mean, you said it. If it's cagey, that might suit Cardiff towards the end. But how do you think? Given what Si said there, do you think Matt Bloomfield will try and attack the game, or do you think he'll look to maybe be a bit more cautious about it?
Well, we can't actually put, two rows of four and defend. We can't put 11 players behind the ball. We've proven it all season that we actually struggled to do it. We've only managed to do it like once recently, and that was against Portsmouth with Cal Naismith in the side, and without him, because he got suspended against Burnley. I'm not too sure that we can actually do that. And I think the fans as well, we need to come to Cardiff and win. So we are going to have to be front-footed. I think if we walk away from Cardiff not getting the 3 points, I feel like it's not like it's the last opportunity. I know there's 9 more games remaining, but the confidence amongst the fan base is already low. So not picking up 3 points against the team just above you in the championship, and they could increase that gap to 8 points. What does that say for the next 9 games? The confidence is just going to be so low. I feel like we have to be front-footed. We've got to go at Cardiff. I think an early goal could suit us, I think, and just try and be attacking. But yeah, it's a difficult one.
How worrying is it, Lewis? Because obviously the main thing at the minute, you're looking at Luton's away form and trying to see how these victories, points, results start to come together is really difficult. Obviously, it's a massive game that's taking place tomorrow, but it's only 5 points away from home that Luton have got all season so far. Is there anything to sort of hang your hat on that says, actually, maybe we will turn it around away? Or is it just a case of blind hope at this stage?
I think it is blind hope, because in terms of in the attacking third, since Matt Bloomfield has come in, he's mentioned how we are entering the attacking half a lot more. We're getting into the box a lot more. Final third entries are up. We're passing into the final third, all that sort of stuff. But we've not got the goals to show for it.
Yeah.
And our strikers, I think the last time our strikers scored was last year in December against Swansea, which was Morris. And it was a gifted goal because the goalkeeper played the ball to him and he had an open net. That was the last time our striker. And it's a confidence, it's a mentality thing. This is under 2 different managers. It needs a complete reset. And I can't wait for the season to be done. If it's League One, it's League One. I just want the season over with because it's painful. It's like a chore watching us play, and it shouldn't feel that way. And I should be believing in these group of players with 10 games remaining. And I don't believe. I've lost the belief. It's sad.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking when you think about where Luton were 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, all of that journey that everybody's been on. It is heartbreaking to see how quickly football does just turn like that. But there are bright sparks, obviously, and obviously I can only speak from the experience of when I've seen Luton. But talk to me about if Luton are going to stay up this season, if there is going to be a recovery, a turnaround, how important is somebody like Tello Asgard going to be? Because whenever I've seen him play, he looks like a real player who is more than ready for the level at the minute and could have a really big role to play in the next 10 games.
So at the moment, we've seen it in moments. But what happens is we're going large periods of the game with him not involved because we're bypassing the midfield. We keep going long. Now, I understand, we've got physical strikers. We've got Nordas, Morris, Elijah Adebayo. They love that physical battle. But we've also got midfielders, especially since the return of Liam Walsh in the side. His retention of the ball is fantastic. He's such a good ball-playing midfielder. So I want us to play through the midfield because that's how Asgard's going to get on the ball. That's how he's going to be creative. We're lacking creating opportunities, like clear-cut opportunities, because our creative players are not getting on the ball. And the only way we look like we're going to score a goal is if teams actually gift us or we score through a set piece. Otherwise, we're not going to split a team open.
Si, I think it's been great to get your insight on Cardiff City. Just to finish off on that, can you give me a prediction for Tuesday night?
Sorry. To be honest with you, I said on my breakdown podcast last night that I wanted to see Cardiff go and really get at Luton early because I do feel like an early goal will harm both teams. Like I feel like if Cardiff go out and attack and grab an early goal, the pressure's on Luton. And if Luton get a goal, especially if it's due to a mistake, the fans are going to be on them because the fans are kind of fed up with the defensive lapses at the moment because it's been all season. But we've been pretty good at home, especially defensively, touch wood. So I think I'll go with a 2-0 Cardiff. If he picks Will Fish, if he leaves Will Fish on the bench again,
I remember you saying, would you bring him in for Gutas, do you think, Si?
So I would have said yes, but what happened on Saturday is young Joel Bagan has been playing centre back, which I really like. He's really good at it. He gave the ball away for the goal early in the first half, and he was a bit shaky after that. I think it got in his head a little bit, but he's been so good this year that you can't begrudge him one mistake and one game where he's a bit off it. But I do think Gutas has been a bit shaky the last probably month, and Will Fish has been outstanding, and I don't quite understand why. He's been our best defender, but he always is the one that seems to miss out. So yeah, I would put him, especially against Lewis said that Luton have got quite physical strikers, so Will Fish makes a lot of sense to me. I think we'll play 3 at the back. I do, which will be
right.
I don't think fans will be the Cardiff fans will be particularly happy. I really like the system, so it doesn't bother me too much, but. I just think he'll go with Bagan, Gutas, or maybe even NG.
The wing-back role, I think, suits O'Dyer better because he's very attacking player. He's never really been a left-back for me, so I think that makes sense. Si, thanks so much for joining us, and all the best for Tuesday night.
All good. Cheers. Best of luck tomorrow, Lewis, and for the rest of the season. I hope you stay up, mate, to be honest.
Cheers, thank you. So do I. Not back to back.
Top man. Si, cheers. So I wanted to come back to you then, Lewis, on Luton Town. Have there been any positives from it? Because you look at it, the Burnley game was a write-off after the red card, 20-odd minutes in. The Sheffield United performance was very encouraging, even if it happened to just go against you. You did beat Portsmouth, and deservedly so. There's an argument to say it's not, like, in terms of recent performances and results, not necessarily too bad.
It's not been as bad, but of course I think fans are panicking because we don't have the wins to show for it. It's all right performing well in attacking spells against Sheffield United, but if you don't walk away with a point or you're not scoring goals, then it's like, well, we're at business end of the season now, so results matter more than performances. I'm just hoping that, I know the Burnley game, once we went down to 10 men, it was done and dusted. Hopefully we can put that game to one side. Don't let it damage the confidence and go into this game with real intent. But the issue which I've got is I just don't know if we can win without Cal Naismith, because he has been absolutely massive. The impact he's had in the side, his organisation, his leadership, his communication. He communicates with the defenders and the goalkeeper. And that's the one issue I've got at the moment is Thomas, fantastic shot stopper, never going to deny that, but he doesn't communicate with the defenders. And if you watch back that first goal, which McGuinness scored the own goal, McGuinness's body language is looking at Thomas and going, why did you not come and claim that? That was in your 6-yard box. And he stays glued to his goal line. So there's a lack of trust with defenders and goalkeeper. And when you take out the main man that's kind of gluing it all together, that's the concern for me. So I think that's why there's so much concerns right now about Luton, because we're not winning games of football, and away from home as well. One win since September. It's just like, when are we going to win games? We've got to play the teams around us away from home, so we've got to win away soon. You would like to think, but yeah,
absolutely. Talk to me about the wing-back spots, because that's one thing that I was sort of hoping, Lewis, that you'd be able to get the ball wide. You don't want to be having to sort of complicate things too much at this stage of the season. So I'm thinking, you've got two good attacking wing-backs in Isaiah Jones and Alfie Doughty. Is there a chance that you might be able to just use them and get the ball wide and get crosses into the box for Morris Adebayo and hope that they can find some of that confidence?
Well, the thing is with this wing-back system, so when Matt Bloomfield came in, I was excited because he was going to play a back four, because I'm done with this 5 at the back. I hate this wing-back system now. I feel like it's been cursed over the last 12 months with the amount of defeats I've seen. So I was really hopeful, under Matt Bloomfield, we'll play with these wide attacking players. We recruited to play with a 4-2-3-1 formation. It's clear that these players cannot do it. And we might have to revert back to that in the summer when we have a proper transfer window, have a proper clear out. So he's gone back to playing this wing-back system, which hasn't really been working all season. But at least these group of players know how to play it to an extent, because it has been successful in the past. But because we keep doing this long ball every single time, there's a lack of confidence to give the ball to the midfield. And then there's a not willingness to spray the ball out wide. I want Isaiah Jones front-footed against a fullback, using that pace. The pace is so dangerous. And then you could use his pace, and then you've got the crossing ability from Alfie, that quality on the left-hand side, to put balls into the box. But we're not spraying that ball out wide. And sometimes it's too slow, and sometimes it's just long ball, 50-50 battle with the defender, don't win the second ball, the other team retain possession of the ball, and then it's back again. And it sometimes it's like that for 90 minutes, and you just can't. It can't be that. It needs to be a bit more. Be brave. It's the time to stand up now. 10 games remaining. Do you want to be a hero and keep us up? I want to see that now, but it's down to these players.
Well, talking of saviours, Christ Makoso put in a decent performance against Portsmouth a couple of weeks ago. I know he was somebody that you picked out, Lewis. Do you think he can finish the season with some good form?
Hopefully. Of course, it's a bit harsh to judge him from what happened against Burnley, of course. But the game against Portsmouth, wow. I was I'm impressed. The energy he was giving to the crowd after just shielding a ball out for a goal kick. He looks like a young centre-half that just loves defending. And that brings back that old Luton, which I think we've been missing so much this season. He has that. And what's really good about him is his recovery runs. So it looks like he's been beaten for pace, but he hasn't. And he gets back in time and he just clears the ball away, or he uses his strength and power. But he goes back to my point which I've already been making. Cal Naismith was alongside him. This time round, he'd be. I do think he'd start against Cardiff, but he'd be against former Cardiff player in McGuinness. I don't think McGuinness is going to lead him. I don't think McGuinness is going to organise him, and that could be a concern because he's still young. He's still new to English football. Is he going to make rational decisions? That's the thing. We don't know yet. He's still that raw. But against Portsmouth, what a performance.
Yeah, well, but I suppose he did have, if you think back to the game against Watford at home in September, October time, that was a game where McGuinness, you would argue, maybe did step up. And so I'm wondering, can we see a bit more of that in the last quarter of the season from Mark McGuinness, or certainly while Carl Naismith is out?
Well, with McGuinness, it's a strange one, because I do think there has been fans out there been overly critical of him because of the price tag, the amount of money which Luton spent for him. It wasn't 10 million, it was 10 millions overall if he hits those add-ons, as that's what doesn't get mentioned. But I think the performances has been good from him, but because he hasn't had a consistent defence, and because he joined late, like after a couple of games into the season, that's had an impact. So he was a slow starter. But when we were playing a 4, when Matt Bloomfield came straight away, in a back 4, wow, he's a lot more comfortable. He's not a right-sided centre-back. He's a old school. I want to clear it. I want to get rid of it. I'm going to put my body on the line. I'm going to throw myself into shots, and that's it. That's what he wants to do. He's not a modern-day centre-half for me. He doesn't seem that comfortable in possession with the ball. And in the attacking attacking set pieces, he's very dangerous. He wins an awful lot. I think he's got 6 goal contributions just from attacking set pieces. So, it isn't bad, but I think he's not quite ready yet to be that leader. And that's what I have. He definitely seems like more of a confidence with him. Prediction for tomorrow night then? I'm trying to be positive. I really am trying to be positive. I've gone with a 1-0 away win. I do think this could be a potential last opportunity. I know we've got 9 more games, and I know we've got to play teams around us. But I think fans will look at this and go, if Cardiff go 8 points clear of us, it's just going to impact
also,
confidence.
by the way, Stoke and Hull, I think, have home games as well on Wednesday night. So, if you lose that one the results go against you the following night, you could be 8 points clear by 10 p.m. on Wednesday. So,
yeah, exactly that. So I think I think a win as well. I think it'll give everyone a massive buzz around the place. Yes, we won away from home. Yes, we're 2 points away from Cardiff. And I think going into the game against Middlesbrough and then Count Naismith coming back into the side, I think everyone will have a massive lift. I know we've got 1 or 2 players returning back, like Reece Burke. Chong looks like he could be back after international break with his hamstring injury. I think Ted and Menji as well. It's on the verge of coming back. So you're then in a good position if you could go into international break, say, get 4 points from Cardiff and Middlesbrough. But I feel like if you don't win against Cardiff, you're not going to get a result against Middlesbrough, who are quite good away from home rather than at home.
Yeah, I think as well, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, actually, you need to break this duck. The reason that I think tomorrow night is so important, it's not even that Cardiff will be so many points ahead. It's that actually all of the big games that Luton have got at the back end of this season are away from home. It's Derby away, it's Stoke away, it's Hull away. They're all these really massive away games. And so breaking that duck as early as possible. Let's go into, sorry, I'm saying let's as if I'm part of the, yeah, I'm one of you now, Lewis. Let's make sure that we're going into Stoke, having already won a game, having already got the monkey off our back. So we can say, right, we can win away from home. Let's go and do it repeatedly. And that's why I think tomorrow is so important. Not because it's terminal, but because actually it could really generate that momentum that makes a huge difference in those huge games coming up towards the end of the season.
You're spot on. I think, mentally as well. I keep hearing, professional modern day footballers come out and saying how important the mental side of football is. Winning away from home, a massive game like that against Cardiff, I think for all of them could do. I think they all need it. And then you've got that massive lift. We won our last home game against Portsmouth, won your last away game, and then it's like, yes. And then push on and let's go and do it. Because I'm looking at this thinking, look, it's 10 cup finals. You win 5 or 6, you stand a very, very good chance of staying up. So fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Lewis, best of luck. And I don't envy you going to Cardiff on Tuesday night, not knowing, with the safety on the line. So I know it's going to be a stressful week for you. But best wishes and look forward to catching up soon.
Cheers, guys. Thank you for having me on.
Top man, Lewis.
Cheers.
Yeah, and everyone gets subscribed to Lewis Williams on YouTube. Our next guest is Jack Bryan from Rams Review. Jack, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. That we're talking of crucial victories. Luton had one against Portsmouth a week or two ago. You had one yourselves, beating John Eustace's former club, Blackburn Rovers, getting your first points of his reign. That's an absolutely mammoth win, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's bigger than being the first win of his reign. It's Derby's first win of 2025.
Wow.
You know, they hadn't won or scored a goal at home since the Boxing Day victory over West Brom, which, let's face it, likely only came because of the fortunate timing of Carlos Corberan, leaving the
He left on
Badgers
Christmas
for
Eve,
Valencia.
didn't he?
Yeah, so that was literally less than 48 hours before. I remember it coming out late,
including Christmas Day. So it's like, it was a perfect storm, that one.
Yeah, it was, because I remember literally it was about 5 past midnight Christmas morning, and I thought, how should I start Christmas? Oh, I know, I'll do a tweet about Corberan leaving and West Brom being the next opponents not having a manager. Merry Christmas. So, you know, that was genuinely how that started. So yeah, it goes back that far. And I think really, if we'd have been having this conversation this time last week, the sentiment would have been Derby are dead and buried. 7 points. Or, well, not necessarily this time last week, but certainly later in the week, by the time the gap was 7 points. That gap has now been cut between Derby and safety to 4. And this now becomes a huge, huge week with the return of former boss Frank Lampard with his resurgent Coventry side before a trip to Plymouth Argyle.
They're all playing each other, aren't they? They're all playing each other down at the bottom. And I think that's what's bringing so much sort of tension to this. But I feel like it's almost a very similar conversation to the one we've just had, where for Derby, how important, you know, Coventry, it's such a difficult game. They're flying at the moment. I think Simon confirmed to us earlier that it's the best run that Coventry have had in their history in the league in terms of how they're going. So it's a huge ask to get that result tomorrow. But at the weekend, going away to Plymouth, that really feels huge, doesn't it? It feels like Derby, just like we said about Luton, need to get that away monkey off the back to really kick on. But how much has changed since Eustace has come in? Obviously, I know it's not been loads of games. Does it feel as though there's some positive momentum coming there, or was it a little bit of a freak on Saturday?
Right. Well, the first thing to tell you is I've almost lost count of the amount of injuries. Now, last week alone, Derby lost Lars-Jørgen Salvesen for the season. That's the £800,000 Norwegian striker who was brought in January. Kemar Roof, who came in on a free just a couple of weeks ago. Ben Osborne is out for 5-6 weeks as well. And, Nathaniel Mendes-Lang, we found out more about him. And then Ryan Nyambe as well. So Mendes-Lang had been absent for a while, but we now have a bit of an idea of that. And then, 4 more dropping out last week. Eustace said at full time they'd had 3 different game plans. They lost 3 starters on Friday. And, for them to come through, score 2 goals in the first 7 minutes and get Pride Park rocking in that way felt like the moment. That was the moment that Eustace had kind of arrived. What I will say is, stylistically, is it that obvious that there's been 2 different managers and an interim coaching team over the last few weeks? A lot of it's looked fairly similar. Eustace went back to the 3-5-2, which Paul Warne had favoured at the weekend. And to be fair, I think it worked in Derby's favour. It was one of those things where I think there's a realisation that pretty football might be difficult with this squad in the situation they're in. They went a bit more direct. They scored those 2 early goals and, it worked out for them. So I think for John Eustace to really build the team in his image, that's going to be the summer, whichever league Derby are in. But it does feel like there's that little slither of optimism there, which was certainly not there a month ago or so.
Jack, I wanted to talk about the intensity with which you started against Blackburn, because 2 goals in the first 7 minutes, of course, absolutely started like a rocket, and you can see that you've really built on the organisational framework that you built in his first, after the QPR game, first full couple of weeks of training. And then, obviously with that performance, the way you started. And what really impressed me was the way Jerry Yates, Ebou Adams and Marcus Harness all linked up in those attacking areas in that sort of wing-back system.
Yeah, I think it was massive. I mean, that is the one thing that's to John Eustace's credit most, I would say. They look so much more organised in terms of that setup. Whichever shape they're in, even the 4-2-3-1, even those first 20 minutes against QPR, his first game before Ilias Chair scored the most Ilias Chair goal you've ever seen, and things started to go to pot. They looked better. I think the kind of higher press, the higher intensity of the press has definitely helped them in that regard. And if we look at Saturday in the sort of 3-5-2, you're talking about a side who scored 2 goals in the first 7 minutes with Marcus Harness playing as part of your front two, who is not a striker. It was a remarkable job for them to get out the blocks in that way. As you say, that the link-up was really strong. And I'd say at wing-back as well, Kane Wilson being back, he was nicknamed the Buffalo at the start of the season in pre-season. That came out when they were in Spain. And I think if they're going to go on a charge now, a lot is going to be on his shoulders. I've got my favourite stat that I read out most weeks regarding Kane Wilson. I've probably told you this before. He is miles ahead of anyone else in the Derby team in terms of progressive carries. Right. Ability to carry the ball more than 10 yards in the opposition half.
Jack, do you almost feel a bit sorry for Kane Wilson, the fact that he's not playing for a better team? And whereas if he was playing for, I look at the idea of, I know it's quite a bit of
an absolute drive-by, that guy.
I know.
Wow.
But for instance, I look at somebody like Bristol City, who I would maybe question them in the sort of wing-back departments, and that could be the thing that they're missing to get into the top 6. Kane Wilson's playing for a Derby side. He's largely been playing under Paul Warne, where you'd be getting neck ache if you're a wing back or a midfielder. So I just wonder, has he been restricted a little bit, even though he's got obvious quality?
I think he'd do better in a better team. I think had him and Ryan Nyambe have been fit at the same time across the season, it might be a different conversation as well. Whether that was Wilson almost playing as a wide midfielder or a winger with Nyambe behind him, or them both kind of covering that right side between them as a right centre half and a right wing back. Because you look at it, the most that ability with the progressive carries, the most touches of any Derby player on Saturday as well. He actually also made the most recoveries. So there's been a lot of criticism of him defensively, but he put a shift in. And I would say, he would do better in a better team. I think a lot's going to be on him because there isn't really anybody else fit who can do that. The only other one who kind of takes the ball and takes the games for opponents is probably Corey Blackett-Taylor. So I'd say, the irony of Bristol City, for example, is of course that's where he went from Forest Green. He had the injuries and didn't really kick on, and but yeah, I think there's definitely an argument for someone like him in a more defensively solid team where he could have a bit more license. Yeah, I think get him running at defenders and he's dangerous. So it'll be interesting to see with that one, I think.
Craig Forsyth then, Jack. He got among the goals. I've got to say, well done to him. Fair play, because he's been playing so many years for Derby County. And my personal opinion is that Craig Forsyth's best season for Derby County was 11 years ago. I think it was a 13-14 season, and even in the 14-15 season I would argue that he maybe dropped off a level. So it seems quite odd to me in a way that he's stuck around for a decade since then, but also you've kind of got to, does suggest a certain level of professionalism and dedication to be able to have that kind of durability. But I don't know whether it would have been possible for him without some of the, maybe the off-field challenges that Derby County have had in that period.
Yeah, it's been a tumultuous, 12 seasons that he's been at the club now, and that has probably played its part. Let's be 100% honest. But regardless, full credit to him to kind of do what he has done over the years and be reliable whenever called upon. I think he won all of his duels on Saturday, as well as getting the goal. He was getting up and down that pitch for every set piece whilst playing on the left of the back three. The work rate that the guy puts in, despite the obvious lack of pace, it looks a bit like me on a football pitch, let's be honest. But I think, he's such an important player for that dressing room. I can only imagine. to be around this long in the way he is. I mean, he spoke on Radio Derby on Saturday of feeling a little bit like he'd got into a time machine over the past few days. And it did feel a bit like that with him getting up and down the pitch and getting that goal and so on. But you've now got Jeff Hendrick come back on a short-term deal, of course, with David Ozo's injury. And then to add to that, Colin Gibson was doing the interview on Radio Derby, who had long been the commentator there. So yeah, there was a bit of a feeling. It did feel like we'd gone back a while, but I think yeah, the fact he's still going is full credit to him. The fact he's still as relied upon as he is perhaps reflects on equally some failures in recruitment at the club over the years. Every left back that's come in, you've thought, this is probably them overtaking Forsyth. He's probably going to be more of a backup. He might kind of become a squad player. And it's not really happened.
Ollie, sort of hovering back to the sort of bigger picture for Derby County from a neutral perspective, I think the choice is really, is it Luton or Derby who's likelier to stay up from the current bottom three? I think Luton obviously have the squad that's come down from the Premier League and the obvious sort of associations with quality that we might attach to that, even though they are short on confidence. With Derby, managerially, I think John Eustace's CV is probably better than somebody like Matt Bloomfield's. Would you put Derby in that category as the team that if Stoke, say, drop into the bottom three, as you've suggested, Derby could be the ones to climb out?
Yeah, definitely. I think it is a two-horse race, really, between sort of Derby and Luton, and they've got to start putting pressure on those teams above them. They've got to start dragging them back into that dogfight. Obviously, it's 4 points at the minute. One good result, and when you're looking at 1 point, 2 points, that then becomes very, very tight, very exciting. And so I do think that they've got to be targeting that. I think the biggest worry for me is, and like I said it at the start, is that it's two teams who I think's easiest games for the rest of the season are probably away. So it's the away games that are really going to decide whether either of them can step up, take it to that next level and start getting the points to catch up to Hull or Stoke or Cardiff. Because, when you're looking at Leeds at home and Burnley at home and those kind of games, you can't expect any points there. But Plymouth away, that's where you've got to start taking your chances. So I think actually this next week, these next two fixtures, both teams have got winnable away games. I think for me, that'll give me a much better idea of which of the two teams are going to be the one to catch Stoke. But I am going out on a limb to say that one of the two will catch Stoke.
Interesting. What do you think, Jack?
I think, this next week is huge. I think if Derby beat Plymouth, whatever happens tomorrow night against Coventry, I'm actually impressed for the first time, so that should be good. But yeah, so if Derby can win at Plymouth Argyle, then it's on. I think will be the atmosphere. I think we'll start to see those Great Escape graphics potentially being wheeled out from archives of graphic designers. But I think tomorrow night is about just putting in a good performance. If they can nick something great, the expectation isn't there. The expectation is really high, I would imagine, on Saturday, considering that Derby have won once away all season, ironically against Coventry. So yeah, this week will be a big deciding factor. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. If Derby can keep themselves kind of heads above water and in it going into those final 5 games in which they play Hull, Stoke, Luton, and there's another one as well who is Portsmouth, that's the one who escaped me. All in that kind of bottom 8. That will be massive. I mean, imagine if I take my fan hat off and put my journalist hat on, imagine Derby Stoke on the final day. If Derby can pick up a couple of results between now and then.
That's mouth-watering for me. That's made me go even harder on my stance. Derby are going to catch Stoke. I'm telling you, Gab.
You've got the fan hat now, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm catching it for everybody. I'm just putting all my new ones on every time somebody new joins. But yeah, that last two in particular, Hull away, Stoke at home, that's absolutely massive. Obviously, as well, we're talking about Derby's away form, but if we looked at Hull, for example, and I'm sure we will, their home form is just as bad. And so there's definite opportunities there. If Derby can keep themselves within 1, 2, 3 points going into that final run, there's a huge chance there. And I really like the idea of that.
Well, Jack, thanks so much for joining us and all the best for the remainder.
Yes, thank you very much. Can I just say before I go,
Go for it.
I've been part of Level Playing Field's Unite for Access campaign video this year. Various games already happening. There are Derby's games tomorrow night. If anyone has any spare time, do look into that because it's a great initiative, and anything we can do to stamp out ableism in the stands is obviously massively important.
Absolutely, a really worthwhile cause. Jack, thanks so much for joining us, and all the best, mate.
Cheers.
Thanks, Jack.
So we have got a video message from Joe Bell of Argyle Life and the Green and White podcast. But apparently he's too busy to join us. I mean, I can't imagine what else he could be having on, that's more important than this. But
6 o'clock on a Monday. Come on, Joe. Nobody's
I
that
know,
cool. You're not going to lie.
Out of order. Here's what he had to say about Plymouth Argyle's slim survival hopes.
I do look forward, Gab, to being able to join you in much better circumstances than what we are at the moment. It's incredibly tough right now with Argyle. We've hit a bit of a wall. It's a shame not every game can be in the FA Cup. To be quite honest with you, I remember sitting in Manchester coach station just a few weeks ago, feeling really positive about what was going on with how we were going, how the situation was unfolding, but the last couple of weeks things have gone very stale. We have suffered badly with the injury to Ryan Hardy in the Blackburn game. Obviously he's come back in the game at the weekend there against Sheffield Wednesday, but he's nowhere near fit. You could tell that. He's rushed back, and Miron said it himself, it's because the lack of quality in attacking area really is crippling us at the moment. So we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to adapt in a way that I don't think we expected to a few weeks ago to get ourselves out of this, or to at least give ourselves a chance with just 10 games to go. We've a really horrible last 4 or 5 games on paper that we're going to do well to get anything from, particularly at the moment with the way the team are performing. It's a huge game on Wednesday night at Portsmouth. I said that we couldn't afford to lose at Hull last week, and we did. I then thought, well, we can't afford to lose on Saturday at home to Sheffield Wednesday, and we did. So maybe I'll use a bit of reverse psychology and say we don't need to win on Wednesday night at Fratton Park, but the basic fact of the matter is we do. We're 6 points from safety. We're back to the bottom of the table. It's effectively 7, maybe even 8 points because of the goal difference where we find ourselves at the moment. We need an almighty turnaround in results. Right now, the defensive structure, the defensive organisation appears to be dwindling a little bit. We're using the same crop of players essentially week in, week out, with the partnerships of Sorinola, Talavierov, Katic, Plegazuelo. Timo Pukac is sort of in and out now after a little hamstring issue he picked up before the Blackburn game. So yeah, it's not great. And when you lose your captain as well, in the way we've lost Adam Randall with a 3-game suspension, losing his cool after the Cardiff City game, that probably just about sums up where we're at the moment. There's a guy who cares incredibly passionately for his hometown club, and the pressure's getting to them. Miron alluded to that after Saturday, and they're going to have to find a way to deal with it, because that's not a good indictment on his team, that they're not coping with the pressure. And at the end of the day, if they're not coping with the pressure now, what are they going to do next season in League One, where we're expected to be one of the top teams? So there's a lot of soul searching required over the next few weeks, but more importantly, we just have to try and find a way to arrest this slide that we're on at the moment, because it's becoming really worrying. We've lost all attacking threat. We've seemingly gone back to being far too open at the back, which was one thing that everybody could have praised Miron Muslic for when he came in, that he'd sorted us out defensively. But it's very worrying. We've got to try and remain upbeat as we possibly can, but you can't get away from the fact that we're now essentially needing top 3 form to get ourselves out of it after getting so close. So we're going to give it our best shot for as long as we can, but the players are looking drained. By the time we play Derby at the weekend, we'll have played 12 games in 41 days with an already stretched, depleted squad, and a squad that we all know has been lacking in quality ever since really we came into the Championship. So our 2-year stay may well be coming to an end pretty quickly, But now it's time for a lot of soul searching, a lot of investigating to go on behind the scenes to make sure that we're in the best possible place to finish this season with some pride restored, but also to give ourselves the best possible chance of coming back to the Championship at the first time of asking. Sorry I can't be with you again tonight. Hopefully by the time the next relegation EFL debate comes around, we've still got something to talk about on an Argyle front. But enjoy the show, guys, and I'll be watching in for sure. See you later.
Yeah, thanks very much to Jay Bell for joining us in difficult circumstances, I think, for Plymouth Argyle after that 3-0 defeat to Sheffield Wednesday. Puts them certainly up against it in the battle to beat the drop. Slightly more upbeat is going to be, hopefully, at least, Nathaniel from the Hull and Back podcast. Good evening, Nathaniel. How are you?
Oh, as you say, much better. I was just checking what the results had been last time we spoke, and since then we've had a great win at Sunderland. Disappointing against Cardiff, of course, but we finally got that home win to break that duck and pile a bit more misery on Plymouth, which we needed to do. I might be 10 quid down, of course, with our bet, but we're only 1 point. We're only 1 point ahead of 21st, so it's not done and dusted. Of course, if we lose to Oxford on Wednesday night, then it'll be completely reversed, especially if Plymouth or Derby win that big game you mentioned. But yeah, things are starting to look up, and with 10 games left, 5 points clear. That's not, it's not over, but that's a pretty good buffer, especially at that end of the table.
Yeah, you must be happy with the defensive resilience you showed to earn a point at Bristol City after Jair Pedro was sent off, having produced himself a lovely finish to open the scoring.
Yeah, it's just typical that I think he'd not scored in about 7 or 8 games. He scores that lovely goal, and then 90 seconds later, he gets sent off, and that appeal has been unsuccessful. So we're going to miss him for the tough West Brom game, but also home against Oxford and Luton. So that might just swing it back in the opposition's team's favour. But yeah, the defence, I think, is about 12th or 13th best, 11th, something like that in the league. I think the frustrating thing is that we haven't kept many clean sheets. It's more that we concede only 1 every game. And when you only score roughly 1 a game, that makes it difficult. But I would have taken a point at Bristol because we have a terrible record there. We've won once there in, I think, 60 years. Last time for, I think, was 2012. If you don't count the League Cup, of course, we wouldn't. To hold on and only concede a penalty goal after 75 minutes. That momentum stat you see on various apps. We had 0 momentum after we conceded, so we completely locked it up. So that it was a fantastic result, and it's just another result where you see how good Ivor Pandor was in goal, and you think, why couldn't we have just played him last season? Because then maybe we would have been bottom of the Premier League instead.
I'm not sure the conversation on Panda is quite as black and white as that.
Don't. That's a shocker.
He's a better goalkeeper than Ryan Onsop. There's no doubt he's a better goalkeeper, but is he a better footballer? I think that's the debate. And the answer is obviously still yes, in my opinion.
No, I think that's fair. Ollie, where do you see Hull City as the in the relegation dogfight? I know you're a bit worried about Stoke at the moment. Do you think
I'm biased, unfortunately. I'm unbelievably biased in favour of Hull City because obviously they came to Bramall Lane and spanked us 3-0 about 6 weeks ago. And unfortunately, in order to preserve my own confidence in my own team, I have to believe that Hull are really good. I actually think they've just been unlucky most weeks and they should be right up there at the top. But no, I think I'm looking at Hull's form, and obviously it feels a little bit more, this is going to sound ridiculous, it's consistently inconsistent as opposed to the other teams. They consistently lose week in, week out. They're really struggling to get results, struggling to get wins. Whereas it does feel as though every sort of 2, 3, 4 games, Hull pick up a win. They pick up points. They consistently do make sure that they're going, I think it's around a point a game for the last 8 to 10 games. And I think that's more than enough for what they're going to need in order to stay up. I think it's consistent, and I don't have too many concerns about Hull, in all honesty. I think there's enough games left that they've got, if they can make sure they've got that consistency at home, because that's obviously the big question mark, is when it's a game like Oxford at home, can you deliver? Just get the 3 points that you should be getting in that game, and that just ticks you over, keeps you going towards the end of the season. So I have a lot of confidence that Hull are going to be okay, But that big question mark is, how do you kick on from this? And how do you learn the lessons of all that difficulty, all the struggle that's happened this season to make sure that it's not the same conversation this time next year?
Nathaniel, I wanted to ask you about, you spoke a few times last time you came on the podcast about 3 weeks ago about some of the challenges, some of the imbalances in this whole squad that Ruben Sellés had to overcome and find solutions to before he can really implement the more idealistic version of his aggressive high pressing methods. Do you think that in those subsequent 3 weeks he's found some of those solutions, and how would you describe them?
Well, maybe, but then Pedro, of course, is going to be suspended for the next 3 games, and Elio Matazo, the third ACL injury, he's going to miss the end of the season. And of course, I think Louis Barry, well, we hadn't played at Sunderland then, so he's injured as well. So maybe he had worked them out, but he hasn't worked them out anymore because the best players, yes, again, at this point of the season, March, are out again. So I think it'll probably be next summer where we see the best of us. I mean, it'd be nice to end the season strongly, but I just don't think we have the players to, really push on. I still think we'll be roughly where we are, even if it's comfortable. But Matazo especially, he played really well at Sunderland, and then he gets the injury against Cardiff. So, it's just more issues. And I think Carl Joseph hasn't scored yet. He'll be playing up front. He had been
Well, do you know what? Can I just talk to you about Carl Joseph, Nathaniel? Because when he was previously, I've never really thought of him as a prolific goal scorer, because even when he's had some good League One stints, obviously Blackpool in the first half of the season did pretty well there. It's often been, for me, from an observational capacity, more about the way that he facilitates the goal scoring parity in other forwards. So, for instance, he had a spell at Cheltenham Town under Michael Duff in the first half of the 21-20 season. His main strength then was actually his spring and his work ethic, and basically facilitating, creating the chances for Alfie May to be Cheltenham's big kind of goal scorer. And so, yes, I think he can fit into the style that Ruben Sellés wants in terms of his work ethic against the ball, but I don't think that he's going to be the guy that fires you to survival.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's unfortunate because he played relatively well on the wing against Plymouth. And now with Pedro out, he's going to move into the middle because we'd found that balance. Got Joseph on the wing. He reminds me a little bit of Shane Long, where he's not a prolific goal scorer, but he works so well with Jelavic all those years ago for just a few months when we had both of them in the Premier League. But yeah, Joseph is now going to be playing in the middle, and Gelhardt will have to go out wide. And I thought that front four we had with Kamara, Pedro, Gelhardt, number 10, and Joseph worked quite well against Plymouth in the first 15 minutes against Bristol. But Sayers is going to have to rip up those plans again. I think Joseph, he needs a goal. I'd much rather have him in a separate position than in the middle, because I think compared to Pedro, his finishing is not quite prolific. And if we get a chance, we really need to fall to probably Crooks or Gelhardt in the next few games whilst Pedro is out. But it'll come. But I agree, he's definitely probably not. I don't know whether his best position is out wide, but I'd rather have someone in the middle, if that makes sense. So maybe if you want him in the team, he has to play out wide, like Gelhardt had been doing.
Are we talking about Louis Coyle and Alfie Jones still as two of Hull City's most important players, certainly from a point of view of dressing room influence and the intangibles, I guess?
Well, it's a very good question, because them and Regan Slater. I think Regan Slater has missed a lot of sitters this season. He's the reason why the XG table, we're about 14th, and we're, been in the relegation zone most of the season. Jones, they're exactly the type of players that you probably want in the dressing room in a relegation fight, but don't perhaps have but they're partly the reason why we're in a relegation fight, because the quality hasn't been there this season. Them two, especially, and Slater, have been the main scapegoats this season of the many that fans have found. And I think, to be honest, it's probably more of a situation for Coyle, that Coyle is not keeping Drame out of the team. I think the reason he's playing is that Drame has been so inconsistent and poor at times that the reason we have to play Cole is because Drama's not really lived up to the hype.
Right. Interesting.
Interesting. The one for me who I'm excited about, shall we say? Let's focus on some of the positives that we've got at Hull. Talk to me about Charlie Hughes a little bit. Because obviously it took him a long time to break into the team this season. It felt as though he was in that peripheral. I expected him to come straight in, have an impact, but it took him a long time to become that first choice. How is he looking at the moment? And do you think he has got a big future ahead of him? Because obviously last year at Wigan, he really did look like he was going to be a very, very good player. And so really interested in how he's developing and coming along.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to sort of correct you, but it's more just keeping on brand that the reason why he didn't play was because he was injured, like everyone else. So, as soon as he came in, he was one of our best players. And then, of course, he got injured again. He's fully back now. And I think Jones, I was going to say this about Jones. Of course, he missed having Greaves next to him. Of course, you don't just play one centre back; it's always a partnership, or three of them at the back. And I think, McLaughlin, Hughes, and Jones. McLaughlin looks better with Hughes next to him, and Jones looks better with Hughes next to him because he could well end up, with a even higher. He's even more skillful, so a higher ceiling than Greaves, or equal. He's one of the few players we've spent a lot of money on in the summer that actually looks like, was worth paying the money for.
So, Nathaniel, 21st place finish for Hull, do you think, this season, or a little bit higher?
I think it could well be 21st or joint 21st, but the points difference between 21st and the bottom three, it's growing and growing. I think it probably is going to be the bottom three, because if they do have to play each other, they're not all going to win, all the games. And I think we probably need to scrape 3 wins from 10 to stay up. I think Derby could well possibly be down by that point we play them. Preston, possibly win at Sheffield Wednesday, and because I think their home form's like the second worst, I think we'll probably scrape the points we need to stay up. It could well be 19th, something like that. But because of the injuries again, it won't be much higher.
Yeah, well, you sound a little bit more confident than last time we spoke, which is what we like to hear. Just a little bit. Nathaniel, thanks so much for joining us, and keep up the great stuff on Hull and Back. I'm delighted to be joined by our next guest, which is Mike from Every Step Along the Way podcast on Stoke City. Hope your chili con carne baked potato was good, Mike.
Yeah, it was great, mate. The wife's done me proud there, to be honest. So, yeah.
Mike, just wondering, Stoke City, Oli, I'm not going to sort of...
Jump me under the bus immediately. I'm going
to throw him under the bus a little bit, but Oli here is a little bit concerned about Stoke City and sees you as maybe the likeliest to drop into the bottom three if anyone does in the Championship. What's the level of confidence among the fan base for the Potters?
It's real split. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a very, very fine margin, and I think we've all seen that. We'll win one week, we'll lose the next. People around us will win a game they shouldn't, and then lose a game. It's really weird, and I think I've been a bit more encouraged in the last few weeks. Against Coventry, I think we did not deserve to lose that game, and we've seen kind of sprouts of people who can probably get you out of trouble. I think our problem, to be honest with you, Gabs, has been everyone's been injured for pretty much most of the season, and we are actually finally starting to get some people back. Baker's back, and Million Manoff's come back, who was a game changer, really for us the other night. Sam Gallagher, who's always injured, but when he's on form, the guy can score. So I understand what people are thinking about looking most likely, and I think normally I would have been 100% with you. I'm about 98% sure we'll still have a chance. But honestly, mate, who the hell knows at this point?
For me, the big thing that's always at the back of my mind. So like I say, for me, it's the inconsistency of Stoke. It's the fact that it's numerous managers. It's embedded over a number of seasons. It's been a long-term, and I'd say this with all respect in the world, but it's a long-term managed decline, isn't it? Where the club has just seemed to continually, despite investment and everything else. And I feel as though there's an opportunity where after that runs for so long, almost just sucks you down. Even probably the season where you turn the corner, you get the right manager in, the squad starts to look a little bit better. That's always the season where it seems to drag you down. But if Stoke are going to avoid sort of being the team that get dragged in or being caught by any of the others, how important is Victor Johansson going to be? Because I'm in love with the man. I have been for a long time. For anybody who listens to the show regularly, how big is he going to be for Stoke between now and the end of the season? And how big has he been so far to this point?
Yeah, it's going to be huge, mate. I think it's one of them. You always know if you can keep it at one end, you've always got a chance. You're always going to pick up at least a point, aren't you? And let's be honest, I think it's going to be one of the lowest totals to stay up for a long, long time. So I agree with you. I think he's been fantastic this season. Arguably, I'd say probably one of the best goalkeepers in the entire division. I think his stats say a lot. And
certainly
shockers,
Mike. I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think Trafford and Cooper obviously are probably the big standouts for obvious reasons, but Johansson's been great.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you though, mate. I wouldn't swap him for any of them. Personally, I really wouldn't. Not right now. When we're thinking about people with passion and drive. Now there are a couple of goalkeepers. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to turn around and pretend that I've watched loads of the football because naturally I'm not going to have done. So I come on that with red and white tinted glasses, right? So you've got to give me that a little bit. But you're right. I think without him, we would 100% be in the bottom three. No doubt for a second we would be. And who knows, we could be worse off because he gets you that little point, gives you a bit more confidence, and gets you over the line. Whereas if we had Jack Bonham, for example, who isn't fit to play in League One, never mind the Championship, then really the confidence erodes around the entire team. So games where you may have picked up a point, you may have no longer been picking up a point because everyone's so nervous and shocked that they're not picking things up. So he's been, he's been huge, mate. And the worst thing that could have happened is either A, somebody take him in January. Thankfully they didn't. Or B, he gets injured. And I just hope we can't sell him, obviously, thankfully, but I just hope he doesn't get injured because I genuinely would then be nailed on relegation for me.
Yeah, and touch wood everywhere for that. Because also, as well as being a fantastic goalkeeper, he's a great man as well, Victor Johansson.
Absolutely.
The work he did at Rotherham, the way he connected with their fans. Yeah, and I also, Mike, wholeheartedly agree, actually, that I think if I was in your position, there's no keeper in the Championship I'd want more than Victor Johansson. I think he's perfect for that situation. I also wouldn't swap. I'm delighted we've got Cooper. He's perfect for how we play. But for that kind of relegation, keeping the points ticking over, he's the keeper that you need in that scenario.
Yeah, he really is. Like you said, shot stopping, it's pretty much the most of the game, isn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, yeah, you can have goalkeepers who come for crosses and stuff like that. But as you rightly point out, for someone who's been through it with Rotherham, he knows what it's all about. Now, obviously, Rotherham were probably one of the worst teams I've ever seen. I'm not going to lie to you. At the stadium, like no matter what he did, they would never have survived. But yeah, his quality is exceptional, and the only way we're going to do this now, for me, is really by stopping goals being shipped at the other end of the pitch. I mean, up front, as much as Al-Hamadi and whatnot have done their best, and he's actually done pretty well in terms of the way that we're playing. But we're not going to score loads of goals. We did well the other night to come back, but that's again for two players who have been out injured. What happens if Gallagher can't play next week because he's pulled his hamstring again? I don't know, mate. It's going to be close.
Mike, it's been great to get you on for your insight on Stoke City. Final, just before I let you go, what's your prediction for the rest of the season?
Well, I've had us down as relegated for pretty much most of this year. So,
really?
Yeah. Oh, mate. Yeah. We have been absolutely abysmal. Not just bad, abysmal. At least we've been able to steady things a little bit. I think we've got the right manager. I mean, even if we do go down, I hope we don't, but if we did, there's no way we can let him go. We can't keep changing managers. It's done us no good. So, you know what? I'll take fourth from bottom last game of the season if we have to. Derby away ain't going to be a pretty place to go if we need to get something, I don't think. So,
was that the last game?
Last game. But we've got Leeds as well, three games before the end of the season. We've got Cardiff, Luton. I can't remember the exact list now, but we've got those coming up in the next few weeks. We've got Millwall away soon. We've got to get points from these games. Blackburn on Wednesday. If we lose Wednesday and we lose against the people around us, we're in big, big trouble.
Absolutely. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. And best luck for a nervous end to the season.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it. Cheers, Ollie.
Stop, man, Mike.
Well, we're a little bit against the clock, but we'll just get in Alfie Wilson for a word on Oxford United. Alfie, what are you feeling in your waters after that 1-1 draw at Norwich City? Do you feel like that's the kind of result that can just nudge you towards the survival line?
Yeah, it's a nudger, isn't it? It's a nudger. I think the other thing I didn't know before we got the point at Norwich on Friday night was that Rowett apparently has never lost 4 league games in a row in his entire career, which I think is absolutely mad, really, to be honest. But yeah, it's
consistency.
It's a very useful point, particularly given that over the last month in particular, I think we've kind of felt a lot of pressure, not only on our home games, but on our fixture list in general, upcoming fixture list in general. It's kind of becoming harder and harder to kind of circle the games in which you can kind of mark 3 points down. So any points to take us to the, let's say, 46, 47 mark, if I can be optimistic like that, given, Luton and Plymouth, as I'm sure you've already discussed before earlier on in the show, they don't look like turning a corner anytime soon. So it's that kind of horrid stage of the season where, as good as the point is for us on Friday night, you're kind of caring as much about other teams' results, really.
Well, just a quick final word, because I know Ollie's got to shoot off in a few moments, but a quick final word on the Will Volt's weapon, the long throw, of course, and Sparky Harris getting among the goals. Can he finish the season in form?
Yeah, well, when his last goal was on Boxing Day, and Sparky's a kind of striker that gets his goals in clusters, or at least has got his goals in clusters in the past. So when he scored on Boxing Day, I was like, oh great, he's going to go on a run where he'll score in like 4 or 5 games in a row now, but he didn't. So I hope that maybe this time might be a little bit different, and he's going to have the workload fully on him with Bradshaw out injured until after the international break at least. So it's a good opportunity for him to do that. We've got Hull away, Watford at home over the next few days. So 2 kind-ish fixtures, or at least not up against like top 6 sides. Hopefully he can keep the confidence going. I also think it might be the first goal we've scored off a Will Volt's long throw. I think Dane Scarlett might have scored one against West Brom back in October.
Yes, I do remember that, actually. Yeah.
In the last minute.
Yeah.
But I can't remember if it was Volksy who put the throw in. But anyway, he's at least in my opinion, has been the player who's revolutionised his form most under Rowett, really. Him and Brannigan have found it a really sturdy double pivot, I would say, which is not kind of the sexiest adjective. But I'm not sure we're really in the business of that at this stage of the season.
Gary Rowett.
I'm not sure if the word sexy and Gary Rowett really go hand in hand. Particularly given that he seems to have cleaned out the club shop with his touchline attire as well. Him and Brannigan have been really solid in a pivot together, whether they've had a proper 10 in front of them or Alex Matos, whose job seems to basically revolve around kicking people, which I don't really mind.
It has its uses.
Yeah, exactly. They've had a lot of workload on them as well because they've played every game as a pivot together. I expect them to keep doing that. I think generally from our perspective, it's just hobbling over the line with kind of our tough fixture list left and keeping an eye over our shoulder on Derby, Luton and Plymouth, basically.
Absolutely. Well, you've given yourselves a favourable cushion, I think it's fair to say, going into the finale. Ollie, we're thinking Derby are going to overtake Stoke. Is that going to be a big shout?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think I'm willing to commit. I think what I'm listening to, I think I've got a lot of confidence in Cardiff, in Hull. I think they're both going to pull clear. I think Oxford have got enough of a buffer. They're far enough ahead now that they'll just maintain that gap. Not to disparage at all, Alfie, but I think you might end up dropping a couple of places, finishing maybe 5th from bottom.
I mean, my only question for you lads, and maybe any Derby fans watching, was because I haven't been able to watch, if Derby deserve to win on Saturday against Blackburn.
They started like they were on. I mean, to be honest, we've been talking earlier today. Like it's the stage of the season where you focus more on the results than the performance because it's like so crucial. But I think the fact that they scored twice in the first 10 minutes, and I think if you can start games with that kind of gusto, then it's hard to begrudge.
Maybe the Cardiff Hull Stoke fans you've had on before kind of feel like this as well. Just I'm so paranoid about QPR on Wednesday last season. And kind of the mega runs they went on. And so even though it's unlikely, like any kind of like flicker of a run from like teams beneath you, I'm starting to spiral. But like Derby will win their next 5 games in a row.
Maybe Eustace has finally clicked. Obviously, that's what happened for Danny Röhl, isn't it? It took them 5, 6, 7 games to get going. And once they did, they never stopped. No, I think it was more, I think it was that intensity of the start. They really kicked on, got those early goals, and then were capable of just keeping Blackburn at arm's base. So I think it'd be wrong of us to say it wasn't deserved, but I don't think you'd be sat back watching it saying vintage performance, you take it. It was more a really fast start and then just making sure that they were as secure as possible. But yeah, it's given me enough confidence that if they can produce that intensity, I really trust Eustace as a coach. I think he's fantastic. And I just have so many doubts over Stoke that, my take on the relegation is that Derby catch Stoke. That's where I've got to after today's chat.
There you have it. Brilliant stuff. Oli, thanks so much. Brilliant co-hosting as always. Thanks for waiting the extra 5 minutes to finish this one off. Alfie, great to get your insight. Thanks to all our guests this evening. Thanks to you for watching at home. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you could do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify and hitting that like button. And we'll see you again for another Championship podcast next week.